So we're going to lay out this tape and use it for point line intercept, and we want to lay it out to 100 feet. Just get it taut, there we go. And then we're gonna go by foot down the line. So 1 foot, and then identify what plant touches it. So what do we have right there at 1 foot?
Well, at 1 foot there, we got a little maple.
So we got sugar maple. So we have to go ahead and record that. Does it look right, Alec?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And canopy above. What do we have above 1 foot?
White cedar.
White cedar. And then on top of that,
it's a sugar maple. Isn't it?
on top of that we got some aspen. So we have an aspen above that.
Oh, we do, yeah.
Yep. 1 aspen in there. So let's go down to 2 feet. So we're hitting rock. So it'll be leaf litter and then rock at the surface. And then straight up from 2 will also be arbor vitae, the northern white cedar, and aspen. And we'll just move all the way down foot by foot. And so here we have something different. We have a leaf litter as a basal layer, and then we have blue bead lily and starflower. So after we get that all the way done, then we'll want to go over to the trees and do basal area. So we'll do it in this northern white cedar. So we're gonna measure breast height. So we're looking at diameter, breast height, or DBH. So we'll put this tape around the tree, right at chest height, and we'll wrap it around the tree, and we'll overlap, and it overlaps right here at 7.2, so 7.2 inches diameter breast height. So we'll do that and get a forest inventory, 3 for each tree species within the plot, and the plot's 1/10 an acre. And that will show us forestry production and the ages of trees in the stand and what stage it's in.
Okay.
So we can use management practices to better determine where to go next. So I have a spherical densiometer here to look at tree canopy cover. So you have these different squares, and every square has 4 points in it. So just think of 4 dots in the middle of the square, and you count how much has foliage and how much is open sky. So look straight up in the canopy and you can tell what the canopy cover is.
Okay.
So we'll have to go through and count each square as hits. So I think we only have 5 gaps. So you do 96 minus 5, which would be 91. And then times it by 0.104, and that will give you the density of the canopy. So we're gonna take a tree core sample. So we're gonna core into the center of the tree, and it'll tell us how old it is by the number of rings. So let's take this, put it in the ground, get it started. You should always make sure your borer is sharp before you put it in the tree, and use WD-40 so the core sample can easily be pushed out. And then you want to take this thingamabobber and put it in the top, and then flip it over once, and then you should be able to pull out the core. And so you'll get a nice core sample right here. And then I can take this back and put it in a sleeve and count it later if I want, or just sit down and count it in the field. And so right here is the center of the tree, and then I can just count back from there, and it'll tell me how old the stand is. Hold this for a second. And I would just take it out of the tree. And I could plug the tree up when I'm done if I wanted to. just to prevent insects and other bugs from getting into it. There you go. This is the core I just pulled out of a northern white cedar. So I can count from the center back and figure out the age of the tree, and then it will tell me the general age of the stand. So I'll take 3 samples from different trees and then count back from the center each year and figure out the stand age. And then we can figure out what management practices the best use to go for the next step. And I can incorporate that with my Ecological Site Dynamic tool and then figure out what the next step is and how management implications will affect the overall tree canopy stand. So I'm looking at this sample of moss to determine the specific species. Some mosses have hydric indicators, so we can tell if an area is wetter or not, depending on the certain species of moss that will grow there. I'm using my hands lens to identify the plant and zoom in on it, so I can see all the fine hairs and details. We are ecologists, and this is what we do. We go outside and we get to experience nature in the summer and do field work for the NRCS, and we're doing plant inventories and ecological site work. I chose to be an ecologist because I get to spend my summers outside in the field doing important work that can be used for land management practices, and it's open to the public and publicly available. So it's a way of serving the public while also doing what I love, which is identifying plants and working in nature. And they'll have all the publicly available information for eco sites, and you can see what your property is based on the soil, and then figure out what eco site you're on, and then the best management practices for your land.
Right, so I started with NRCS about 8 months ago, last September. I came out of school, graduated with my degree in ecology, and was primarily interested in finding work in public service. And the NRCS mission of trying to work cooperatively with landowners and stakeholders to achieve conservation goals really resonated with me, and so I was happy to find a spot working with them. The SPSD side of things is interesting to me because it's a little more, well, it's obviously more science driven, more data driven. It's more going and collecting the facts for and the data for people to make conservation decisions off of. So I don't know, I like that part of it. Okay, so every day is very different. During field season, I'm out tagging along mostly with the soil scientists in the office and in the area. And so while they're either helping them collect soils information, or while they're collecting soils information, really I'm out collecting plant data, going out and running transects and clipping grass, and taking all of those data, taking things back to the lab and getting everything measured out and calculated. And then in the off season, a little bit in the field season, but mostly in the off season, it's a lot of entering those data, working with those data, trying to fit those data into the models that we work with, those state and transition models. So it's a really healthy mix of field work and desk work, which I was really happy to find, because if I'm not out in the field, every once in a while at least I kind of go crazy. So having the opportunity to be out in the field, especially in the summer when it's nice, being able to still get behind the computer and doing some data work and that kind of stuff, some GIS work is a good mix. When it comes to the area I'm in northeast Nebraska, really some of the most important decisions to be made are the decisions about how to manage our rangelands, especially further west in Nebraska, but being able to preserve the rangelands, the native grasslands in Nebraska, which is the most endangered ecosystem that we have in the United States, being able to give landowners the tools to be able to make decisions about how to graze their lands, how to manage their lands, to get the results that they want for productivity, while also conserving, the natural communities that should be thriving there. I think landowners want to do that in almost every case. It's just a matter of getting the information and getting the tools out to people so that they can make those decisions, enabling them to make those right decisions. Compiling those models and getting the data out to people, that data will outlive all of us. Those the models that we build will hopefully, and they'll be refined over time for sure, but the data that we collect now should be informing people's decisions well into the future.
So my journey for the NRCS is a bit convoluted, non-traditional. I was in the Air Force for 6 years, right out of high school. I got out, I went back to school at Ohio State. Originally, my specialty was environmental science focused on soil. So I became exposed to the NRCS and soil survey through my undergrad. I was in a soil science lab and we used soil survey during that lab. From there, I went to grad school and I transitioned more into plant ecology. So I still had that kind of soils background, but now I was more interested in a whole ecosystem approach. Yeah, it really depends on the season. As you can see, during the summertime, we're out here collecting data. So it really starts with collecting the data. So in the summertime, we come out here, I wake up in the morning, I start with breakfast and coffee, just like anyone else. Get all my gear together, we head out into the field. We work in teams of 2. It's a soil scientist and an ecologist. We do that not only for efficiency, but also for safety purposes. We're out here in bear country, so it always helps to have someone watching your back. So while the soil scientist is digging a pit, soil pit, and describing the soil, I'm collecting data on the vegetation community, and I'm trying to tie my concept of what we see here on the landscape is here, and we tie that to the concept that the soil scientist develops as well. So we're really just collecting data. We're pretty much out here, I would say, throughout the Alaskan summer, which is pretty much late May to maybe early September, kind of depending on the year. We're out here probably 60 days or so. And then summer ends, all the leaves fall off, we go into the lab, we do our lab work, or we do data entry, data analysis, and that's really when we start to develop the concepts. So you're thinking about these concepts while you're in the field, and then when you get into the office setting, you can put all these data points together and you can start to do your analysis and maybe answer some questions that you weren't thinking about while you were out there. So then we develop these ecological concepts for land managers and land users to utilize. Things like you're a landowner and you want to know what kind of trees grow on your property and what could potentially be there in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, maybe 100 years. So we're really developing this overall concept of what we see here is just a snapshot in time, but what can we expect to see here in the future, and how will it respond to things like climate change or different land management uses. Hey, I'm Tyler Netz. I am an ecologist out of the Wasilla Soil Survey Office. I'm the ecology lead for the Copper Basin Survey here in Mentasta, Alaska, with this beautiful white spruce that we have here. So part of our survey is to do a complete census of the plant community here and also an estimate of the production of the forest. So I'm going to take a tree core from this white spruce. So far I have taken the height of the tree using this rangefinder Forestry Pro. I've taken the diameter breast height as well using my forestry tape here. That allows me to get the circumference, or the diameter rather, of this tree, the height of the tree. I'm going to core it now, which will give me an estimate of the age of the tree. So you put all that together and it will allow me to infer what the potential growth would be of this tree over a period of time, say 100 years, 150 years. That could be used for timber production and stuff like that. So go ahead and set this down and we'll take a core with this increment bore that we have here. So we'll unscrew it. We have this tungsten carbide bit that goes into the tree itself, a spoon or an extractor which will allow me to pull the core out. So the bore locks into the handle. We'll take the core right at the breast height, which is where I measured the diameter of the tree. So once the bore gets started, the screws just kind of pull it right into the tree, so you don't have to put a lot of force in. It's important to make sure that you hit the center or the pith of the tree so you can figure out the total age. So we'll use our extractor to test to see, make sure that we're past halfway. We'll stick the extractor in, upside down. So then when we back it off a half turn, it pulls the core right out. And then we have all of our rings. The pith is located right here at the very end. And now I'll go ahead and count these rings to get an estimate of the age. And then you can also tell a little bit about how the tree was growing based on the space of the ring. So if the rings are further spaced apart, that means it was a really good growth year. If they're tighter, that means there might have been competition by nearby trees or maybe a drought or something like that.
Yeah, so I've been coming up to Alaska for the past 3 summers, and I usually come up for a couple of months and we do field work. And for me, it's a great opportunity to be involved in initial soil survey. Some areas of the country are working on other types of projects, for instance, update work. But when we come out here, we're working in areas that have not been mapped before. And it's an opportunity to come up with our own concepts about how the landscape was formed and look into the research that exists for the landscape and develop our own concepts for soils and for plants. And it's a really collaborative process working between soil scientists and ecologists. And so it gives you the opportunity to have a lot of creativity in your work and kind of have a blank slate where you can come up with your ideas of how the landscape has developed and what important ecological and soil properties exist and how that might influence people who are interested in using our products. Yeah, so I kind of have 2 favorite parts of the job. One is field work, and that's something that has always been a passion of mine and was the reason that I studied environmental science and just wanted to learn about the environment. And so being able to come out here and identify plants, I really enjoy botany, plant identification types of work. And so just being able to be outside and work with coworkers and get to know new people, see lots of new places, learn about a new region that you've never been to before, kind of what the geologic history of the area is, what the flora is, what different species exist that you haven't seen, and kind of compare similarities, different like plant genera that you've seen in other areas, and just being able to get outside. And that's something that is both like a hobby and professionally very enjoyable. Then the other part that I really enjoy about my job is when I did my master's, I got interested in data science and statistics. And so during the winters, we work a lot with the data that we've collected, and it gives me a good opportunity to use those types of statistical tools and data analysis tools to understand the data that we've collected and turn it into a more meaningful product. So I've come to enjoy both the office work and the field work, and there's a lot of intellectual freedom about how you go about analyzing your data. And so yes, I really enjoy that process, working with coworkers and trying to make something meaningful out of the data we collect. One of the really important ones is just being kind of a cooperative person who's interested in working with others. When we come out and collect field data, I'll be collecting vegetation data and forestry data and describing the plant communities, and the soil scientists will be digging a soil pit. And it's a very collaborative process to discuss what the soil scientist is seeing. Are they seeing evidence that this is a dry site or a moist site, or is there a certain nutrient regime that they're seeing, certain pHs? And we kind of confirm those concepts with each other based on what they see from the soils and what we see in the vegetation. So we try to really communicate between each other. And then when we turn this data into more meaningful products, we still need to continue that discussion about when they create soil concepts, they need to be consistent with the types of ecological communities that we see so that they're copacetic with each other. And then I guess the other piece is just a curiosity, like most scientists have, to want to really understand how, what the dominant processes on the landscape are. and wanting to understand, what is the relationship of each plant to its environment? What kind of conditions does a plant want to grow in? And similarly for the soil scientists, what do particular characteristics in the soil pit mean about that landscape and the types of influences that it's experienced over time?
Hi, Jamin. Can you tell us about how the data collected by ecologists is made accessible to the public?
Sure, Heather, I'd be glad to. I'm Jamin Johanson, the National Leader for Ecological Sites for the Soil and Plant Science Division of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I'm located here in beautiful Alaska, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways that the public can access the data that we collect in our field operations in the ecological site work. So there are basically 2 points of entry into the ecological site products that are called ecological site descriptions. One is the EDIT database, the Ecosystem Dynamics Interpretive Tool. And if we scroll down here to the Ecological Site Descriptions catalog, we can go and explore either through maps or lists all of the ecological sites that have been described in the United States, as you can see here. The other access point is Web Soil Survey. So websoilsurvey.nrcs.usda.gov is a great starting point to access all soil survey information. And we'll start with an example from here. So I'm in Alaska, and you can see here, I can pan around to different parts of the state, and I'm gonna pan up to this Yukon Flats area, and we're gonna zoom in, use the zoom in tool here to look at the Yukon River. Okay, and then at the top, I can click on this red box that says area of interest. I might have to zoom in a little bit closer. And then I can select an area of interest, and it will show me inside this red box now all of the soils and ecological sites that occur there. Now, if I want to look at the ecological sites, then I need to click on the Soil Data Explorer tab and the Ecological Sites sub-tab, and my area of interest will then show a map of all the different ecological sites correlated to these soil polygons. So let's take a look at this. Why don't we take a look at this green polygon, D32TE6. That's the soil map unit right here. And if we look at the major soil component, 40% of that map unit is the Tahitro soil. And this hyperlink here is to the ecological site description. Boreal forest, loamy terraces, moist. By clicking on that hyperlink, I'm redirected right to the EDIT database where I was before, but this is specifically to this ecological site. And you can see here's a picture of what it looks like on the ground at the Boreal Forest, Loamy Terrace, moist ecological site. Now on the left, there are all sorts of different features described for this ecological site. So the physiographic features describe things like landforms. So this site occurs on alluvial plains, on stream terrace landforms that are rarely flooded at elevations from 300 to 1,000 feet. There are also climate features described, water features such as wetlands and riparian zones. The soil features section has great pictures of what the soil pits that underlie this site might look like. And here's some basic soil features described for this site. So mostly alluvial soil deposits and some organic material on top, as you can see in these photos. Now, if we click down to the ecological dynamics section, this is what tells us how the plant community on these soils looks in reference conditions, such as if I click on this box that says reference. Here is a relatively undisturbed reference state for these stream terraces near the Yukon River on the Yukon Flats. But we also know that this ecological site and most ecological sites don't have static plant communities. So this state in transition model here shows 4 different plant communities that occur in response to fire. And we can click on any one of these to see photos, productivity, and plant lists. These particular plant lists are hyperlinked to the USDA plants database. So if we want to learn more about Picea glauca, that is white spruce, then we can get more information directly from the ecological site description. Here's another plant community that's not quite as mature, and if we scroll down to the last community, we can see what this ecological site looks like immediately following a burn, with fireweed and other early seral species dominating, including ceratodon moss. So here's a picture of these communities and some pictures that show transitions among these communities over time. And that's really the power and strength of ecological site descriptions, is that they all have these state and transition models. So not only do we begin to understand how ecosystems are arranged in space on a map, but we can understand how they're arranged through time. If we already know the area of interest, Yukon Flats, we can do a lot of exploration in the edit tool to find this information. Yukon Flats lowlands right here, and we can access the information in that way, and we can see a list of all the ecological sites in the Yukon Flats. Here's the one we were at, Boreal Forest Loamy Terrace Moist, but there's also a Boreal Woodland Loamy Terrace that's frozen with permafrost. So the edit database houses ecological site descriptions for regions throughout the country. And then it shows for all of these regions throughout the country. You can click on any one of these regions and get a list of the ecological sites and the state and transition dynamics over time. And so all the data that our field staff collect throughout the summer gets aggregated into our databases to populate this tool for use in conservation planning, research, or other restoration activities. So that's a quick summary of what we do with our data. Thanks for watching.
Interested in becoming an ecologist? Come work with us. Look into usajobs.gov to see if there are available openings for ecologists today.